What's up, Get Fit fam? Good morning. It's your boy Ayindei, coming to you from Authentic Alphas. Getting in some of this morning cardio. Fasted, of course, on an empty stomach as always. And this morning, I just want to talk to you guys about always shooting that open shot. It's the last day of the year. Just reminiscing on back in the day, some of the things my coach used to tell me, or at least one of my coaches, my track coach, used to give me a lot of really good advice, a lot of motivational input. My first basketball coach always told me, take the open shot. So today I'm gonna share that with you guys. So what do we mean by take the open shot? It's real simple. Whenever you see an opportunity, instead of creating a reason why not to, basically creating your own defense. And the way that we usually do that is through our insecurities. Whatever it is that we're not sure about, whatever aspect of ourselves that we're not confident about, that's what's gonna go ahead and manifest that pseudo defense, that defense that wasn't even there. It's like you're being your own defense. And that's just kind of step one, because majority of the time, there actually is gonna be genuine defense. As boys, we start learning to be competitive at an early age, or at least we should. The society isn't really creating that atmosphere for young boys to safely develop that mentality, but it is part of our development. And as we get older, not only do we become more competitive, but we become more competitive in more areas of life. And we should also be mostly competitive with ourselves. It really is you versus you on the day-to-day. It's going to be you versus other people, of course, but consistently it's going to be you versus you. How are you better than you were? How will you become even better than that? So it's always a constant mission. And because of that, we can't afford to give up opportunities to excel. And when you don't take the open shot, that's exactly what you're doing, guys. You're giving up an opportunity. And that's another thing my coach used to always say. Don't give up the opportunity on offense. Don't worry about who's a better player than you. Don't worry about who you want to pass the ball to or who you think you should pass the ball to. If you're open, you take that damn shot. And if you miss it, you know what you need to work on. That spot that you took that shot from, you need to practice shooting from there so that you can become more confident and overcome whatever your issue was, all right? Just simply get better. But if you don't take that shot, number one, you'll never know if you would have made it. At that time, in that moment, you'll never know. And you lose another opportunity to get comfortable with taking risk. And everything is risk. Stepping outside of your house every morning is risk. All right? Every time you get in the car, it's a risk. Every time you get on a plane, it's a risk. All right? Now, as far as work is concerned, you should always constantly be taking the open shot. If there's an opportunity that presents itself in the workplace where you can move forward, where you can get the attention of the right people, get an opportunity to show what you're capable of, you don't know how long it's going to take for that opportunity to come around again, or even if it is going to come around again, or if you're going to be on the sidelines watching one of your colleagues take advantage of that opportunity, and then you're going to be sitting there kicking yourself saying, that could have been, should have been, would have been me. But you choked, right? You passed the ball. Or you just let the other team steal it from you, one or the other. But if you had taken that opportunity and failed, for one, you'd know what you need to work on. And for two, you'd at least have the peace of mind of knowing that you did what you could when you could have done it. And that's just the point that I want to get across to you guys. This message really doesn't need to be long because it's simple. And I think most messages are simple. At the core, most messages are simple. Even if a concept is complex, there's always a simpler form. There's always a simpler version of that concept. And I think a lot of guys nowadays, unfortunately, they didn't learn these things early enough. You know what I mean? It took them too long. But before I go, I'm going to give you an anecdotal story about something that my grandfather said to me at a young age that helped me to deal with conflict at a very young age. And it's something that I had to share with one of my clients because he had issues with being anxious about confrontation. You know, he's always avoided conflict. So it makes him very, very nervous. And he's in his 30s, man, and still isn't willing to confront anyone about anything. And it's really doing him a disservice in life. So, on to the story. So when I was like, I had to be maybe like, man, damn, how old was I? I think I might have been like 11, man. 10, 11, something like that. And there was this kid in the neighborhood. He was a bully. And the area that I was in New York at the time was, it was a rough area, but at the same time, it was still very traditional. We still had block parties. The neighbors all kind of knew each other. If you was acting up as a kid, the neighbors would like discipline you and then tell your family about it, and then you get disciplined again. So it was still in that era, you know, you're talking late 80s. So, you know, there still was a lot of community cohesion, right? But we did have our local bullies. And there was this family in the neighborhood, several kids, no father. They were all angry. They were all fighters, you know. They were like, there was like one girl, but there was like 3 boys. And they were all like, you know, one after another. They were all like a year apart, a year and a half apart. So that particular mom was just pumping out babies, right? She was pumping out bastards. And there was one of them who was about my age, but he's a little bit older than me and a little bit bigger than me. But this is at an age where I was still kind of like avoiding fights, avoiding conflict. And I got a bike, right? I got a bike for Christmas. That's right. When I was a kid, I celebrated Christmas, or at least I celebrated those gifts. Good Lord, that's one thing I could say. I had a relatively good childhood, You know, even if a gift was expensive, somehow I was still fortunate enough to pretty much get the things I wanted for Christmas. It would just end up coming from like my whole family. It would come from like my mom, my grandpa, and my grandma. You know what I mean? Like the Game Boy was like from all 3 of them. The Nintendo was like from all 3 of them. And this particular year, it was a bike. I got a bike. And anyway, so I'm stunting, you know, on my bike or whatever in the neighborhood. It's all good. And, you know, this kid comes up to me, and his brother is like close by. His brother's eye shot or whatever. And they were like known for like bullying kids in the neighborhood up out of their toys, you know. These dudes would take your Thundercats, you know what I mean? They take your Transformers, because back then Transformers were like die-cast metal. It was the real shit. You know, you didn't want to get beat with your own Optimus Prime, if you know what I'm saying. So a lot of the kids just anteed up. They just gave it up without a fight. So this kid comes up to me and he says, you know, let me ride your bike or whatever. And I'm like, in my head, I'm already thinking, you know, this guy's probably not going to give my bike back. But of course, I was avoiding conflict. You know, I didn't want to fight. You know, I didn't want to get beat up. So, sure enough, I let him ride the bike, and sure enough, he hauls ass. He takes my fucking bike. So now, I'm screwed. I'm trying to figure out, like, you know, like I didn't think I was gonna get that bike back. Of course, I was like, it's a wrap for that. You know, kids didn't get their shit back from these particular kids, these brothers, right? If they took your shit, you didn't get it back. So I eventually go home, and my mom was at work, of course. My grandma was sleeping because she worked nights. She's an overnight nurse. So I'm just there, I'm home. And my aunt might have been around. My aunt was a teenager at the time. My aunt might have been around. So I'm just like, thinking, damn, what am I gonna do? Because eventually they're gonna ask me, where's my bike? So sure enough, my grandfather gets home. It's nighttime. Nothing said, because still nobody noticed that I don't have my bike. Well, next day, I'm going out to play. My grandpa asks, why aren't you riding your bike? Like, why don't you take your bike or whatever? And I'm like, so I wasn't really big on lying, especially not to my grandfather. So he always knew when something was up because I wouldn't make eye contact. So he asked me about the bike again. I was kind of like reluctant to answer. And then he said, you lost your bike? So I didn't know if he was assuming like maybe I like lost it. So I kind of was like, shit, maybe I can go with that. Maybe I can go with I lost it. But then I was like, if I lost it, then it's my fault, because then it's negligence. I was like, shit, maybe I should tell them that someone stole the bike. But then they told me not to put down the bike. Like they told me specifically, don't put down, because we know the neighborhood that we live in. So they told me, don't put down the bike. So I'm like, going through my head, trying to figure out, what do I tell my grandfather, how do I handle this? So I decided to just tell him the truth, because fortunately I had guys in my family where I could just tell them what my issue was. I could just kind of be honest. And then I would usually get some good advice or whatever. So I trusted my grandfather. So I told him. And he was pissed. But here's the thing. He wasn't mad at those kids. He was mad at me. So he told me, he said, you know where these kids live? And I said, yeah. He said, go over there and get your bike. And he told me, he said, don't come back without that bike. Now, looking back at it, I still don't really know how my grandfather had the confidence to know that I wasn't gonna die. But in my, decade-old head, I thought I was gonna die. But I pulled myself over there alone. And I knocked on that kid's door. And I asked him for my bike back. And he said no. Oh my God. But his mom was yelling in the background. Like in or out. That's basically what she was saying. She was like in or out, in or out. So he chose to come out, which I guess was probably the best thing, because if he didn't, I would have knocked on the door again, obviously. My grandfather told me, don't come home without that bike. So the kid comes out, and I'm asking him for my bike, and I'm telling him I need my bike back. I'm in trouble, like I'm in trouble. Like I kept trying to sympathize with him, like he cared about me getting in trouble at home. And he basically wasn't trying to give me my bike. So I wouldn't leave. I just kept asking for the bike in the same spot, and he pushed me. He pushed me, and he was like, "Get out." And every time he'd like push me away, I kind of like walk back up to him, and I'd be like, "Yo, just give me my bike, just give me my bike, please. Please just give me my bike." I'm like begging this kid for my bike, right? So the kid ends up hitting me. So I got my ass kicked, all right? So I got beat up, right? The kid beat me up. But here's the thing, though. His sister went and told his mom that he was out there fighting. And his mom came out. And his mom, I think she was a little surprised, because nobody's ever come to the house to fight her kid before. But she knows her kids are always getting into some stuff. So that was the part that kind of stood out. So she was like, stop it or whatever. So like we stopped and we separated, but I still wouldn't leave. I'm crying. You know what I'm saying? You could. My shirt's all ruffled up. You could tell. Not in a good place right now. But I still refused to leave. I was persistent, and I kept saying, "Just give me my bike. Just give me my bike." I'm crying. You get the little snot, and you doing the. So I was like, "Just give me my bike. Just give me my bike." And then his mother finally asked him, like, "What is he talking about? What bike?" And the kid wouldn't answer. So then the mom asked, oh no, the sister. The sister was like, he stole his bike. He stole his bike. So the sister was basically snitching on her brother. So the mother said, he has your bike? And I just shook my head, yeah. I couldn't even look at her. So she told him, go in there, go get this boy's bike. So the kid comes out, he has my bike or whatever. At this point, his brother comes out. His brother was like always sucking his thumb. He was a bigger kid, but he was sucking his thumb. It was weird. So his brother comes out, just sucking his thumb or whatever. So she's like, give him his bike. So he's like, here. He's all mad now that he has to give me back the bike. So I took the bike. I didn't say shit to anybody. I turned around. I got on that bike. I hauled ass. So I got back home. My grandfather was there just sitting down, hands on his stomach. And he says to me, did you get back the bike? Mind you, you could visually tell I got my ass beat and I'm crying and everything. I wasn't crying anymore, but my eyes were red and you could see, whatever. And he didn't even ask me if I was okay or anything like that. He just said, did you get the bike back? So I just gave him the same head nod that I gave the kid's mom. I just nodded my head and my grandfather just said, good. And then he closed his eyes again. Oh shit. Yeah, so anyway, it sounds cold-blooded, you know what I mean? That is definitely not the tough love that you would have gotten from your mom or your grandma. But I will tell you this. I learned a lot that day. And that was the last time that I ever avoided conflict. So maybe another time I'll tell you a story about how the first time I got my heart broken by a girl, I was exposed to female nature, and it basically ended my simping career. And that happened at like age 16. Is when I canceled my simping card. So I hope I inspired you guys to not avoid conflict and to always take the open shot. All right? Peace.